It was a massacre that claimed nearly 100 victims and left thousands of people living on the streets. It happened in the Central African Republic in 2017. For several years, the country had been in the grip of a bloody civil war. It pitted the mostly Muslim Seleka rebels against the mostly Christian anti-balaka militias supporting President Bozize. The small town of Bangassou in the southeast of the country, on the border with the Democratic Republic of Congo, had remained at peace. But on the morning of May the 13th, 2017, the Tokoyo district suddenly found itself surrounded by armed men. The inhabitants there are predominantly Muslim, the assailants members of the town's anti-balaka's militias, who began shooting, looting and raping. The inhabitants of Tokoyo took refuge in the town's cathedral under the protection of the bishop. Some stayed for 4 years. The area was besieged by anti-balaka forces for months. The UN mission, MONUSCO, tried to restore calm, but 17 peacekeepers lost their lives. A peace agreement was finally signed in April 2018, thanks to the mediation of Christian and Muslim leaders. In 2020, 32 members of the anti-balaka militia were convicted of the murders of 75 civilians and 10 peacekeepers in the region. But even today, peace remains fragile. Caroline Dumay and Thomas Canetti revisit Bangassou for France 24.
It's a special Sunday at Bongi's Cathedral. Aurelio Gazzera is being ordained as a bishop. Father Aurelio is a well-known Italian missionary. He was a priest in Bazoum during the Civil War and was nicknamed the man who made the rebels put their guns down for facilitating dialogue between militants. Pope Francis appointed the bishop to his new position. A fresh adventure the whole community is excited for.
I'm moved by how many people have come here. The Lord gave me the grace to sow seeds for 33 years here in the Central African Republic, and little by little, they're growing.
Father Aurelio's new diocese is half the size of Italy and over 700 kilometres from Bangui, in the southeast of the country. Armed groups are still active there. The streets of Bangassou are peaceful. There are no signs of the deadly clashes that took place between 2017 and 2021. Tensions between Muslims and Christians fueled regular fighting between anti-balaka and Seleka militia. Today, Bishop Aguirre is handing over the diocese to Father Aurelio. He still remembers the dark days. In May 2017, Christian-majority anti-balaka militants attacked the Bangassou mosque. The mission's priests defended the Muslim population.
It was a Sunday. We got a call after Mass about what had happened at the mosque. So I took my priests and we went there. We stayed looking straight at the gunmen and the mosque behind us. We held out our hands to say, "Don't shoot, don't shoot." They shouted even louder, "Bishop, get out, get out. We don't want to shoot you. We have to kill them. We have to kill them all." So it was a hard experience because the bullets passed by us and we stayed there for 3 days. One person had been shot in the shoulder and there was a lot of blood coming out, a lot. So they called me. It was a friend, his name is Hamid, and he was on the ground. I knelt down and with this hand, with my bishop's ring, I put my fist over the hole and it stopped gushing.
After the attack on the mosque, Bishop Aguirre opened the doors of his cathedral to the persecuted community before they moved into the seminary. More than 2,000 Muslims remained there for several years. In the Tokoyo district, near the mosque, we meet Hamid, the man who was saved by Bishop Aguirre. He's since become the town's imam.
I'll never forget. I was targeted by an anti-balaka militant right next to the mosque. He shot me in the chest, and then I fell. It's thanks to Aguirre who picked me up in his van and took me to the hospital.
Hamid is happy justice is taking its course, even if it's a slow process.
Yes, the page has turned and the ringleaders were captured. They're in prison. Have they been judged or not? I don't know. But in time, they will be judged.
5 anti-balaka leaders involved in the Bangassou massacre were sentenced to life imprisonment in 2020. The missionaries have since renovated the premises. Bishop Aguirre shows us a fence erected to protect against armed attacks.
We thought they were going to stay 4 months, but they stayed 4 years. And so little by little, they moved in to save their own lives. That's it, we created bonds of brotherhood, and we possibly avoided a genocide.
Life is back to normal at this mission founded in 1929. The seminarians are back in school, and nearly 4,000 pupils attend these Catholic institutions. Sister Ernestine is in charge of primary level teaching.
How are you?
How are you, Father?
The fact of welcoming the children here during the troubled years in Bangassou created a different atmosphere with the Muslims.
Yes, Muslims also return to school with us. It's a Catholic school, but there are no barriers. Muslim children, Protestant children, we've welcomed them all.
Bishop Aguirre's successor is already very popular here. The older school children recall the war. Dieu merci was 10 years old when he had to flee the fighting.
He spent a month and a half in the bush, in the forest. He was searching for his family and fleeing the rebels. He hasn't seen his mother or father since the war. He still doesn't know where they are.
Dieu merci is one of 300 orphans cared for by the mission. Most are placed with foster families. The youngest or most vulnerable are at the Mama Tongolo Centre further up the hill. Babies are regularly entrusted to the orphanage.
She's the most recent, isn't she? She hasn't even been here a month. The mother died a few days after giving birth. Her auntie took her in, but she had problems. She had no milk. She was beginning to wither away. And when she arrived, she was sucking on anything, even fingers. She was so hungry.
The work of these missionaries is crucial in rural areas, as the government is often absent.
They come very rarely. They don't invest much, especially with the road problems. It's become a very forgotten, neglected area.
It takes more than a week to reach the capital by car. The mission organises an annual pilgrimage to Nyakari, 15 kilometres from Bangassou, so that all the parishes in the diocese can meet. At least 600 pilgrims made the journey this year. The pilgrimage lasts 3 days. Priests take part in workshops to raise awareness of family values, information on the new Jubilee, and open-air confession sessions. It's also an opportunity to get together for a good meal. Monkey is on the menu every day. While the situation may now seem calmer, everyone knows the respite is fragile. This group comes from Bakuma, 135 kilometres from Nyakari. They have been walking for 3 days, fearing being ambushed by armed men who can rob travellers at any moment.
It's pretty much okay in town. It's fine. But outside the city, all around, it's very dangerous. Zape residents can't come to the pilgrimage. Zako residents can't come to the pilgrimage. Zape is 80 kilometers away. Zako is 65 kilometers away. For security reasons.
While they assure us that the centre of Bakuma is under the control of Central African military forces and the Russian military, locals complain of regular attacks and looting of their fields.
There are people who have come with their herds. They're always accompanied by mercenaries. They're from an ethnic group called Mbororo, which is very well known. The ethnic group came from Mali and Niger. They came in via Chad, with millions of cattle, and settled in the Central African Republic. They come accompanied by mercenaries who protect them with guns, Kalashnikovs. She goes to the plantation and is afraid of finding these mercenaries.
Father Aurelio does not have access to his entire diocese. 2 of the 13 parishes are closed, and one of the well-equipped maternity hospitals was destroyed by armed groups. Now he's seeking to establish contacts with all local players through priests like Father Amos, a painstaking task.
In Zemio, for example, I met the Muslim community and the various groups of refugees and displaced people who are there. It's 300 kilometers from Bangassou. And the priests like him and those in the parishes of Zemio and Obo do a lot of work of this kind.
The pilgrimage ends with the ordination of 2 Central African priests. With their arrival, the diocese now has 38 priests. These 2 new additions studied at the small Bangassou seminary. Their mission is to reconcile Central Africans.
These are not religious conflicts, they are armed conflicts. They are armed groups fighting each other, not Christians fighting Muslims. While there may be Christians in either group, there may also be Muslims, but it's not a religious conflict.
About 15 armed groups continue to fight in the Central African Republic. Since 2018, President Touadera's government has allied itself with Russian and Rwandan forces to combat them. In spite of peace agreements, the Seleka and anti-balaka groups merged in 2020 to form a coalition. UN forces patrol to secure civilians and institutions. Many people prefer the security of towns, even if there is no electricity or water, like in places like Bangassou. Hamid, the town's imam, is content with the relative safety. So is his friend Ali. These men travel a lot in the province for business. They say both Muslims and Christians are victims of violence. Ali had also taken refuge in the Catholic mission for 4 years. He lost 5 brothers in the war. He's saddened that once disarmed, some people return to the bush to become rebels again.
These people who say that going back to the bush is a solution, no, it's not a solution, because they don't have the means to do so. They don't have the strength to conquer the country, to take power. And on top of that, Muslims and Christians alike are killing innocent people, their own relatives. Like with the Seleka, they were only following Fulani herders just to seize their goods, to go and resell them. But the government is negotiating. And the president has said he's had enough, and he's pushing for these people to be able to return.
The government has promised to step up its demobilisation program so that the general elections scheduled for before the end of the year can take place in peace. For the Catholic missionaries, the most important thing is to enable all communities to work together. Like in this sewing workshop that brings together Christians and Muslims. Bishop Aurelio says progress has been made, and he hopes the elections will go well.
The situation is still very unclear, with several elements at play. What seems to be a little better after years of progress is the fact that there's been a lot of care to avoid anything that might blame one community or another. People are careful to avoid going back to the darkness we were in 2014 or 2015.
The Central African Republic has experienced 3 civil wars in 20 years. It's impossible to know the number of victims, but in this complex country, torn apart by ethnic and political conflicts, many, like Aurelio, remain hopeful of better days to come.
Caroline Dumay and Thomas Kennedy revisiting Bangassou for France 24. Well, that's all from this week's edition. You can catch it again on our website on France 24, along with all the other editions as well. Thanks for watching.